Hello and welcome to Powering NDR Visibility with Network Intelligence. Today's webinar is sponsored by Gigamon and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech and I am excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. Let's talk questions. We want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. We'll have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, so type those questions in as you have them. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Okay, next, handouts. In the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to an NDR ebook, an NDR resource hub, a case study featuring the Australian National University, and an analyst report about the hype cycle for workload and network security. Just a lot of great resources there. I encourage you to access those now, and feel free to share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, I'm sure you noticed that prize icon there. At the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can also be found in your handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Okay, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Bassam Khan, who's Vice President of Product and Technical Marketing Engineering at Gigamon, and we have Joseph Blankenship, who's a Vice President and Research Director at Forrester. So now I'm going to turn things over to Bassam to get us started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on network-based security in a modern distributed hybrid cloud infrastructure. My name is Bassam. I am with Gigamon. For the past 6 years, I have been looking after product marketing, solutions marketing, and technical marketing engineering here at Gigamon. Very excited today to have Joseph, JB, with us, somebody I've had the pleasure of knowing for the past 15 years, I'd say, more or less, in working together. So JB is Vice President at Forrester, a ton of experience working with customers. So JB, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sam, thank you very much. Yeah, wow, 15 years. I think you're right, but it feels like an awfully long time, right?
Nice.
But yes, I am a Vice President Research Director for Security and Risk here at Forrester. I've been at Forrester for almost, and it feels like a long time saying this, almost 9 years. A lot of my research here at Forrester focuses on things like zero trust, network security, threat detection and response. And my favorite topic overall, just being quite honest, is insider risk, in kind of covering what to do when your insiders do bad things.
Great. And today's topic is very much about the insider. It's what an old colleague of yours, John Kindervag, used to call the soft, chewy centers, I think how he termed it. What happens inside the organization, both from in this case, specifically from a network and network visibility perspective. And the number one tool for this space is a network detection response or some kind of a network analysis tool. The reason we're focusing here on networking is because nearly 100% of attacks today, particularly ransomware attack, take advantage of the lack of visibility, of the blind spot that exists for lateral east-west visibility. In order for an organization to be able to secure and better be able to prevent and secure this type of modern threats and modern adversaries, the number one method from our perspective is really around network and gaining network visibility, eliminating network blind spots. So with that, this discussion is about network detection and response. It's very interesting. JB and I had this good conversation earlier about Forrester's view on the term NDR. JB, can I ask you to jump into that topic a little bit and tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, as you can see from the graphic here, the analyst you just mentioned, John Kindervag, was a Forrester analyst for years. was the originator of the term zero trust and a lot of the thought around the zero trust infrastructure and strategy. But in 2011, he wrote this report, which has the most amazing title, Pull Your Head Out of the Sand and Put It on a Swivel, Introducing Network Analysis and Visibility, or as we affectionately call it, NAV, because it's really hard to say network analysis and visibility fast many times. Forrester has really kind of stayed true to NAV as opposed to NDR. Probably the biggest reason Bassam on why we think analysis and visibility versus detection and response is in the NDR tools that are out there. None of them are able to take direct response actions. Typically, as you can see from the definition in front of you, these are solutions that are sitting passively in the network. They're not sitting in line, not taking blocking actions themselves. That doesn't mean that you can't kick off a response action, from a NAV solution to tell an endpoint, to block an endpoint, to send a request to a firewall, to block an IP address, to stop a session, do any of those things. But we're not typically taking direct action inside the tool itself. Instead, what we're really doing is analyzing network traffic to detect threats. We're using a combination of behavioral and signature-based detection mechanisms. We are integrating with other devices, other third-party tools like firewalls, endpoints, identity solutions, what have you, to take action. And we're also enabling forensics. For a big part of what these tools do is giving us a good and thorough picture of what's going on inside of a network, so we can do an investigation, have the forensics to figure out what happened, and then take sort of the next actions to get a threat actor out.
Got it. So the R part of NDR is really not as strong as the word response would imply, and 100% on board with that. These tools do talk about here's what to do, here's where to look, here's the playbook on what to do, but it makes somebody take an action. It's almost like recommendation versus response.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and we see that as well. So part of Gigamon's reason for being is to make sure that the tools that people run for securing, monitoring, troubleshooting their infrastructure and their applications are have as much visibility as possible. So if I can just take a couple of minutes to explain where we come from, the value that Gigamon provides, particularly from a network detection and response perspective. I'm going to refer probably for the last time back to John Kindervag, our favorite person. Actually, just last week, I got a chance to spend a couple of days with him at an event in Denver. It was a lot of fun catching up. He's just such a great human being. And we talked about the old days around zero trust in the early days and then the evolution over time. I also had the pleasure of working with John here at Gigamon about 2 years ago in determining and sort of mapping Gigamon's capabilities closer with zero trust. And one of the analogies he kept using, I found to be hugely valuable. And this is how I start talking about Gigamon. It has to do with this old joke / story about a drunken man in the middle of the night. He is on his hands and knees under a street lamp looking for something. A policeman walks by and says, "Hey, sir, mister, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I lost my keys. I need my car keys, and I lost them." And the policeman asked, "So where did you lose them?" He said, "I lost it over there, across the street." And of course, "Why are you looking for that here?" "Well, because the light is here. This is the only place I can see anything, so I'm looking for it here." That's the perfect analogy to what we tend to do as a industry, is to be able to really inspect closely where we have visibility. What Gigamon does is our job is to light up the entire street. So rather than just having specific areas that's being very tightly monitored and inspected, our job is to make sure that all network communications is exposed and brought into the security tools that our customers are using. So it's easier said than done. Typically, when we go into an organization, the infrastructure is rather complicated. physical devices, virtual devices, private cloud, public cloud, multi-cloud, containers, on and on and on. It's always changing. A lot of our customers have quite old systems that are working just fine. A few months ago, I was visiting a very large organization, financial organization in the East Coast, and we walked by one of the systems that literally was a Sun Solaris machine, and someone stuck a little paper, taped a paper on the screen that said, "Do not touch, last reboot 2012." So, and this is part of their, I don't know how critical this was to their system, but it was a system that they relied on, and it was running since 2012, was the last reboot.
I'm
So
going to guess that one might be slightly out of date and end of life.
Getting support in that JV, I imagine, would not be fun. And so that's not uncommon. There are mainframes still processing a lot of airlines information and financial institutions information. It's not that uncommon. But that also adds to the story around the infrastructure changing. So once we have plugged in this picture, what we have is a set of tools that organizations need in order to secure, monitor, troubleshoot their infrastructure/applications. But that infrastructure changes all the time. And when each tool has to get plugged into every nook and cranny of the infrastructure, and the infrastructure changing, this becomes a nearly impossible task. And that's why Gigamon came into existence, 20 years ago now, where the philosophy with Gigamon was that, hey, you plug in Gigamon one time, either through tap when you can, span if you must, but through a tap port or span, and collect the data and tap into the data and aggregate it in one place. The benefit of that is each tool only has one place it needs to go to collect its visibility, to get its visibility. And it's much easier to plug in. The data that comes in is much more efficient because we can deduplicate packets. We can remove any type of traffic, like let's say Spotify traffic, out of the security tools because Spotify is viewed as safe. So this was the case that Gigamon presented, and we've been quite a track record since then. So top 10 of the 10 US agencies use Gigamon, almost all of the Fortune 100 companies, global companies, almost all of these large organizations rely on Gigamon on a day-to-day basis. Today's discussion of all the tools on the right-hand side really is going to be around NDR specifically. Before I get into that, one thing I did want to mention is once you've collected the tools, as I mentioned, we dedupe, we clean up the data, we send it to any number of tools out there, just a subset of our partners. We have over 200 partners, I believe, that we have integrations into. And so we make sure that they're seeing all of the visibility, including east-west, lateral, virtual, container level traffic. But there's a set of tools that are unable to see traffic. Why? Because packets are too low level. It's too high volume. These are tools that are used to taking in logs, typically syslogs, but sometimes metrics, events, logs, and traces, melt. And what we've done in recent times is we've also introduced a deep packet inspection engine where we're able to extract out intelligence from the traffic and be able to send to these tools. So Gigamon, Switzerland, when it comes to tools, to make sure that everybody has visibility, all our customers, and as well as the tools that they're using. Today's discussion, we are going to focus more on network detection response. One last thing I wanted to mention here before I ask JB to share some of his thoughts around use cases. From our perspective, NDR is one of the most critical tools in the infrastructure for customer organizations that have been effectively able to intercept malware, intercept ransomware within hours, not days and weeks and months and longer. As you may know, the new, more modern ransomware tends to have a loiter day, not hundreds of days loiter time, but about 3 to 5 days of loiter time before they trigger. Most of the modern malware, as I mentioned, typically happens on virtual workloads on-prem. They move laterally, lock up storage servers, application servers, payment systems, and so on. So the need for viewing network traffic, particularly not just managed hosts, but unmanaged hosts like IoT devices, is higher than ever before. And this is why we're seeing this as being one of the strongest growth areas from our tools ecosystem partner perspective. Lots of different use cases. Would love to get your thoughts on the different use cases.
Absolutely. If flip to the next slide there, we can walk through some use cases. Absolutely. So, yeah, Bassam, I think you really hit on something that was really important with that last piece. About IoT devices and even OT devices, things I can't necessarily put an agent on. A lot of security has sort of pivoted toward this endpoint first sort of mentality, which is absolutely fine. When it comes to fat clients, when it comes to servers, when it comes to laptops, when it comes to things like that, it doesn't necessarily work so well though for your Sun Solaris server. It was last rebooted in 2012. Going to guess that one's not supporting the latest ADR agent. It's not going to work so well for things like badge readers or video cameras or any sort of IoT device you've got connected to the network. It's also not going to work that great for anything that you've never identified and is talking on the network. And that's really where these kind of nav systems come into effect, is to sit back and get a picture of all the assets and workloads and applications that are speaking on the network. IoT devices, OT devices, brand new servers, networking gear, all the things that people can come up with. So probably the biggest thing, what are we very much interested in security? We're very much interested in threat detection. The original NAV report was written back in 2011. We were really talking about on-premise networks only. And now we've kind of taken that and said, hey, it's a hybrid cloud world. We also need to be aware of what's going on in all of our cloud environments, where we've got networking set up inside of cloud environments. Ransomware is not limited to on-prem alone. Kind of the modern day NAV solutions will give you a picture of what's going on in all of your infrastructure, not just your on-prem. So it's really about how do we detect threats that we're not able to pick up with other things, or even using it as for correlation. Kind of look down about 4 rows in this use case table here, and you see kind of this collaboration with EDR or XDR, endpoint detection, all that type of thing. We also can use these tools to correlate what we see in an EDR. Let's just say we've got a detection in an EDR, and we want to understand, hey, where did this come from? What else did it talk to? How has it been talking on the network? Now we can do that correlation and kind of blend those things together. That's what we're seeing in a lot of XDR deployments, where perhaps we're taking alerts into a SIEM from an EDR system, and then from there we kick off an investigation, and then look at our NAV to say, hey, what else was it impacted? Where did this come from? How do we isolate it and really give us that visibility? And another thing I think that's really important to kind of mention here, Bassam, visibility is like the first step, right? So it's not enough to say, if I get visibility of the environment, if I understand how things are interacting and what's talking, that's sort of step number 1. That actually gives us the baseline of what we need to start doing better security. You kind of look at some of the other pieces here, retrospective analysis. Let's just say we do have that detection. Now we can actually go, we've got some interesting traffic. We can do packet captures of those. We may be even doing decryptions of that traffic to understand what's actually inside the packet, and doing some deep packet inspection for that. We're mapping things back to MITRE ATT&CK. And just as you said, Bassam, a lot of our attacks, they're lurking inside of our environment for days or weeks. We are going to see things like recon traffic. We are going to see things like C2 traffic. As we kind of map all those things to MITRE, we can start looking at the attack steps and understanding where we need to intervene and shut that down. In the last piece here, the application dependency mapping, and to me this is sort of crucial, especially when we start talking about hybrid cloud environments. As we spin up a new workload, as we write a new application, we're trying to understand how that application transacts. What is the normal pattern of how it transacts and talks across the network? That'll give us a nice picture of what's going on in our environment. So if it changes, we start seeing anomalies, Now we know we need to go and kick off an investigation to understand why is that occurring. Why are we seeing this new thing? It could also be a little bit of shadow IT. It could be shadow IT is not just devices. It's not just somebody brought something and hooked it up to the network. It could also be somebody is spinning up a new application that they have not gone through the process for. So it's also an opportunity for us as a security team to say, what is that? Who owns it? Is it legitimate or not?
Excellent. Thank you. This is actually a really good list. And if it's okay, JB, I'd like to go and share my thoughts and also ask some more questions based on the case. This is actually quite comprehensive. They're unique, each one of these use cases, but I think it's also quite comprehensive. The first one around hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. We used to feel that the public cloud environment, I'm picking on public cloud for now, is quite safe because the major cloud providers, they have every kind of security in place, physical security, server security, OS security. But at some point, their level of security ends, right? And then the people that own the app that are hosting in these environments, their responsibility starts to take over, correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And the other thing we've got to remember is when it's our application and we've deployed that application, no matter where we've deployed it to, it's still our responsibility. We don't get to abdicate the responsibility to the public cloud provider. The other thing is the public cloud provider, to your point, Bassam, is going to provide sort of table stakes security. They're not tailoring what they're delivering to each individual customer and each individual application. So it's sort of up to us as security professionals to make sure that we've got good security controls in place wherever that workload is deployed.
I was talking to CISO recently, and he kind of termed it perfectly. He said that I keep telling my organization not to, or my dev teams not to trust the environment so much. And then the analogy that he uses is that, and he was using AWS, but doesn't really matter which cloud. He said, Bob, does AWS guarantee performance for your application, that your application runs great, user has a great experience? No, they're guaranteeing the response time. They're guaranteeing some services and uptime and response time. They're not saying that your application performs perfectly. There's no bugs. There's no glitches in your application. Same as security. They're saying that the foundational physical access to those boxes are secure, but the security of your application is up to you. So I found that to be a really interesting analogy. One other point I want to make there is when you're looking from a NAV NDR perspective, there's actually a little bit of a gotcha for public cloud because of what's called gateway load balancers or other types of load balancers. Because what happens is when you grab the traffic from the source where the workloads are running, and you're sending it over to the VMs and the instances where the tools are running, there's some costs that are incurred by the need to have a load balancer in the middle. And sometimes that cost can be quite high. What we, of course, what we would recommend is using a technology, third-party technology like Gigamon. You can actually eliminate that load balancer cost, therefore making your NDR deployment and NAV deployment in collecting the traffic at the source much, much more effective and cost effective. So cost is a barrier, or at least a hindrance that we've seen in public cloud adoption. And we do believe there's a very powerful way of addressing that. The second topic, decryption. So we have a strong opinion in this space, particularly because Gigamon, in a previous instance, we used to have our own network detection response, our own NDR product that we divested subsequently. But we could, just like every other vendor claims, you can detect on encrypted traffic. It's possible using MLAI. However, the false positive rate in that detection tends to be much higher than having access to decrypted as well as encrypted traffic. And so the need for decryption we find to be quite still prevalent out there, even though there's some level of detection that happens. Always better. These tools always detect better having access to decrypted traffic. And when it comes time to create the investigation, do the investigation, create the playbooks and what to do, where to look, it's always better to see what exactly happened 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever its time frame might be that you're trying to CSI pieces back together in working with decrypted data versus working with encrypted data alone. So decryption is a big use case for Gigamon, both physical, but we also provide the ability to decrypt. We call it decrypt without decryption, this really cool patented way of accessing unencrypted traffic in containers, in VMs, without needing to incur the cost of decryption. So that's an area that's near and dear to Gigamon and the value that our customers get from us. The MITRE attack technique, that is something that's been around for quite a while. I'm just always amazed, JB, that framework is still there, which is always very cool. What I did want to ask you about is that's one framework. What's your view of an NDR in the zero trust model?
Yeah, Bassam, it's actually very much crucial. I think that's one of the reasons that when do we have to send like some sort of a royalty or something to Kindervog every time we say his name during this webinar? But it's one of the reasons though that John came up with the idea of doing internal analysis and visibility is because let's just say we build our zero trust environment and we've got things and we think we're pretty solid with the way that we rolled out our protection. We still need to have the visibility to make sure everything is architected correctly, to make sure that when we do, and by the way, zero trust is not some panacea that we put up a magic wall and everything just stays out. Really, if you get to the crux of what zero trust does, is you're limiting the impact of a threat actor, whether it's an internal threat actor that's trying to move around, it's an insider threat, or it's an external threat actor. What you're really trying to do is like limit, what can they do? You hear the term blast radius thrown around, quite a bit. If we have ransomware, our blast radius may be limited because of the way we've got things segmented. But to make those things happen requires that we've got good visibility to what goes on. I said before, visibility is sort of the first step. Visibility being, hey, I need to understand how the network is architected, what traffic flows look like, what normal looks like, all of those kinds, what's talking on it, all those kinds of things. So that's sort of step one. And so that is one of the domains for zero trust is analysis and visibility. And we want to have good analysis of what's happening inside the network and good visibility of all the things that are talking on the network. And it becomes a very critical piece of the zero trust puzzle.
That's exactly right. And visibility also, the next point around EDR, XDR, it's great to have EDR agents. You get to see everything happening on the host, what processes are running, what's eating up CPU, anything suspicious, but it's all within that host. If you do not have an agent on that host, you're not getting visibility. If you have a IoT device, you have a surveillance camera, you have a fish tank, you've got a printer that's connected on your network. Those all do not run, are not able to run these agents, and that's why visibility from a network perspective is so critical. Which also ties into your last point. By having this lateral east-west visibility, tons of security value, but what we find is tons of application value, performance related, troubleshooting related. Every time we have this discussion with our customers, where we show them dashboards that we've built using third-party SIMs, using third-party observability tools, where we always get invited into those meetings from a security perspective. And then once we show them this east-west visibility, what's possible for security, and for example, there's a slow TCP round trip time, there's a packet drop. They said, wait a minute, can I use that for application troubleshooting as well? And then they invite that whole DevOps team over, and then we start having a very different conversation based on the same telemetry, east-west visibility. So things like, for example, when an application slows down, who's the first person that gets called? Hey, it's a network fault. Network team, go fix this thing. But what happens now is they get to see, they as in the DevOps team, as well as the InfoSec team, that their trend line based on Gigamon's metadata coming in from the network shows that TCP round trip time has stayed flat. But there was a spike in HTTP round trip time right around when the problem happened. So if the TCP stays flat, HTTP round trip time goes high. Is that a networking fault? Probably not, right? It's an application is what they need to start going down. So anyway, so there's a lot of value. There is one last topic I wanted to cover with the benefit of this east-west visibility. I'm going to tie that into the decryption, having access to decrypted traffic, both physical and virtual. And I'm going to tell you a little story using actual pictures, if that's okay. We're going to use ransomware as the use case here. And I've said this earlier, which is ransomware adversaries today tend to really pivot and focus on lateral movement on virtual environment. Most of the time, the virtual private cloud would be around VMware. So in this picture on the left-hand side, we have the adversary coming in, doing their thing. The right-hand side, top part, says, this is what my security tools see. Bottom part, this is what they see with east-west visibility, and also the deep packet inspection on east-west visibility, and then decryption on east-west visibility. Step one, there's some kind of attack coming in. This is going to happen, unless that's probably too harsh a statement, but this happens repeatedly, no matter what kind of walls we put up. Smishing is a pretty popular approach now, but somehow the threat actor gets into one of the machines, one of the hosts out there. They do their command control type of work, figure out what's going on, and they figure out a way to get in. So this is where the Chewy Center comes in. Once they're in the system, the threat actor is able to take an action, in this case, maybe put a dropper file in or some level of other level of malware, either as a service or actual malware into the system, but they're now in the Chewy Center. Once they're in, they're able to move laterally using encrypted traffic. Encryption is very powerful for security purposes, privacy purposes. It's used by, in a proper way 99% of the time. But today, threat actors take advantage of encrypted traffic for hiding their activities. This is one of the key reasons why decryption and inspection of unencrypted traffic is so important, not just for physical, but for VMs, containers, pods, nodes, and so on. So that's how they're moving laterally. The second thing that they'll do is do some level of backdoor connection, and it's a minor blip typically. There's a bad IP address, and if this is a very rich target, they're going to sort of do some manual processes as an adversary to come in and create a low risk type of a activity, which just sets up the backdoor. At that point, they find a dropper machine to play the dropper, and there's a whole set of activities that they can go through in lateral movement. This is not hypothetical. This is how the healthcare attacks have happened recently. Prior to that, the automotive group. Prior to that, the casinos. We're seeing the same attack. The group's called Black Cat. Typically, it's ransomware as a service that's happening. This is why the lateral visibility is so critical for staging servers, and then ultimately for the final exfiltration. And when that happens, it's already too late. So all of a sudden, we see a jumbo north-south traffic file exfiltration. But by that point, it's too late. All the damage, all the encryption, ransomware type of work has already taken place. So this is where Gigamon really helps our customers to make sure that the east-west visibility is there, and that the tools, particularly the NAV NDRs, are able to see this east-west traffic in a decrypted way. So with that, I would like to see, first of all, thank everybody. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I'm going to ask JB for closing words. But before that, 3 points I wanted to get across. Number one, lateral visibility is absolutely key, particularly for modern type of threats that are out there. And I talked about ransomware in this case, but any type of modern threat, even, all the way up to nation state type of attacks, having that visibility is super key. And not just lateral visibility, but decrypted lateral visibility, because clear text provides so much more color, so much more depth than just encrypted data. point number 3 is really around cost. So being able to optimize the tools that's going into your nav NDR, optimize the traffic that's going to nav NDR, as well as when you start monitoring public cloud traffic, all of a sudden the cost can jump quite significantly through load balancer costs. And that's where a solution like Gigamon really helps reduce that cost and make it much more feasible and acceptable by security teams, by DevOps teams in the solution that we have. Those are my last thoughts. JB, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I was thinking about, kind of going back to the little story that you told before about the guy looking for his keys under the spotlight. I was reminded of a client conversation I had a couple of years ago, where the client was rolling out some security monitoring capability, and he told me, "Hey, we've got about 80% of our assets covered. Is that good enough?" And I asked him if the other 20% of the assets were attached to the same network, and he got kind of quiet. And I was like, "Oh, I think that answered that question," right? So let's just say you're not able to, push out an EDR agent or some other kind of, endpoint tooling to all of the environment. Now, this is, kind of getting back to your point about cost, Bassam. This is another way of kind of offsetting some of that cost for things that I don't necessarily want to put an agent on or don't have the ability to. I still have the ability to see what's happening on the network and assign, whatever I'm observing, to that asset, and then kick off my investigation from there. So there's always more than one way to approach one of these things. I think the other thing when it comes to endpoints is if there is some sort of an EDR bypass from a more we'll use the term sophisticated threat actor, air quotes or not. But if there's an EDR bypass, now that EDR is no longer trusted. And so we need another way to understand what that asset is doing if we don't think we can trust it. And this is another way of having that threat detection and being able to do those investigations.
Spot on. Not only is the network visibility, network traffic nav NDR function it's the ground truth of what's really happening. Networks always viewed as the ground truth, but it's also a bump in the wire. It's almost invisible. An attacker can go up to a host and see, aha, I see this agent. I know how to handle, this EDR agent. I know how to handle that. I know how to side load it. I know how to bypass the security. We are seeing more and more of that from more and more of the advanced adversaries. But network communication, it's happening silently. So that's why it's much, much harder for the attackers to really figure out what's exactly going on. So from a next steps perspective, I would love to talk to anybody that wants to learn more. I can dive much deeper into what Gigamon offers and how customers are using Gigamon today to help better secure their environment, particularly from a nav NDR perspective, but also extend that into the other areas that I talked about. Putting my information out there, happy to get in touch with you. You can use the QR code to go to our website and get a lot more information. If you want to say contact us from the website, very welcome to do that as well. With that, hopefully you found this session useful. Again, thank you for your time, and big thanks also to JB for joining us today.
All right, and we do have a poll question up here for you. If you go ahead and fill out what additional information you'd like about the Gigamon solution. Your options include a data sheet, technical white paper, a customer case study, pricing details, personal demo, if you'd like to try it for yourself, etc. So you can click on as many of those as you like. Bassam, are you ready for some questions?
I would love to take some questions if there are any.
Okay. Awesome. The first one here, they're wondering, are there specific metrics or KPIs that show Gigamon improving NDRs?
Yeah, there are a number of them. Actually, I forgot to say hi to people that said hi: Greg from Atlanta, Paul, Jorge, Tony Morteza, Gilbert from SC, and others. And Steve, I'm going to disappoint you. There is no affiliation between Gigamon and Digimon. So I hate to break that bad news to you, but good question. To get to the KPIs, that's another seriously excellent question. There are a number of KPIs that are used to bring out on how Gigamon's benefiting, but also in general on how you know your NDR is providing value. That has to do with being able to track lateral movement, because that's where you're going to catch threat actors. As I mentioned before, and during the session with JB, that's where the bad guys are living now. Why? Because no one's inspecting, or very few people are inspecting, the lateral virtual traffic, and it's not that hard to do. One of the things we offered in our last slide earlier is I would love to kind of pull up my screen and show you how that works, how easy it is. Do feel free to reach out directly to me. It's bassam.khan@gigamon.com. Not too busy to talk to our customers or potential anybody out there. So very, very happy to do that. I've got a team that can also jump in. So lateral visibility, decrypted visibility, provides better NDR, or NAV, as JB likes to call it, capability for tracking IOCs, or identifying IOCs, tracking movements, and then also refining the response that people have. So what are the KPIs? KPIs are the detection accuracy rate. I'm going to name 4 of them. So first one is detection accuracy rate. So how accurate is my detection, and how much false positive? That's your second metric. How much of that is false positive? And you should be able to track this with or without Gigamon in place, and hopefully, and what we've seen with our customers, when Gigamon gets deployed, the data, the signal to noise ratio improves manyfold. So that's the second metric. The time to detection, on how long the loiter time is, that's another really key metric. And guess what? You're going to find this much quicker than you would otherwise. One of our customers, I think it's a public case study up in Canada, you can just check out our website. The person that said it just take us weeks to find what we're seeing instantly, or I think he said within an hour, we're able to find and respond to the threats with this east-west lateral virtual and decrypted visibility. And last metric, Scott, is really around mean time to respond. So basically, now that we are seeing things faster, what really ultimately what's improving is my ability to address that threat in a much faster way. These are the 4 metrics to track.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Hey, we got a question here from Jeffrey, who's wondering, can AI chips or NPUs be used?
Yeah, that's a good question. The sorry, AI chips. Is that what?
Yeah, that's what he said. I'm not sure if Jeffrey's talking about like GPUs or
Okay,
or what there. Yeah,
that's a really good question, Jeffrey, and I'm not sure how to answer that. But what I can tell you is a couple of things around AI. As far as the AI chips themselves, what we are starting to see is a sort of a return of the growth of the data center. A lot of workloads have been moving to the cloud over the past decade, 15 years, right? Moving to public cloud or even virtual to colo. But the data center work has been, at least the growth rate has been slowing down. What we're starting to see more and more is the use of AI running in data centers for internal AI use, using NVIDIA and other chips to be able to keep that AI engine in-house. At Gigamon, there are literally 7 different engines that we're kind of playing with. It's too weak of a word, but we're testing out right now to make sure, for both for internal purposes, for improved security, as well as what our product can do, research purposes. We're running that in-house. Why? Because we want that training to not go out back to the AI platforms. So with the growth of the data center and with the notion of data poisoning, AI poisoning, there's a big need for this level of visibility, for east-west lateral visibility that's happening within data centers. One last point on this, Scott, is what we provide is better security using Gen AI, or using AI in general, or NDRs to do definitely, to protect, but also better protection against AI and against Gen AI. To that extent, we can detect off the wire what the traffic is. We can say this is Gen AI traffic, and there are over 30 different Gen AI engines that we can track out of the box. Where not only are we saying this is Bassam talking to Scott, but that communication is pattern matches to ChatGPT's agent-based traffic, or Gemini, whatever the AI engine might be. An area of interest for our customers is it's Code Whisperer by Amazon. It's a great service, and you can upload a whole bunch of code, and it'll find bugs. It'll make suggestions. But the scary part for a lot of our customers is, hey, wait a minute, did our developers just upload our IP, our code into a public domain or centrally third-party based AI engine? The answer is yes. So not that this traffic should be blocked or directly impacted, but quite often we find that our customers at least want to inspect that traffic a lot more closely. So it's a great question. Thanks for whoever asked that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey, for that question. And Jeffrey did follow-ups to say that is what he meant, I think, on the GPU chip. So okay. If that question, if that answer answered your question, great. And if not, feel free to send in a clarification, and we'll have Bassam get back to you. Next question here, Terry asking, how specifically is sending plain text to NDR better?
Yeah, that's another really good question. No matter what the NDR vendors will claim, they make all kinds of claims around their AI engine can detect just as well on encrypted traffic as detecting threats on decrypted or clear text traffic. That may be true to a certain extent. The fact that these engines are so smart and they're able to send in and flag, based on traffic behavior and IP addresses and all of that this is some bad intent in this traffic. However, they will all tell you that they perform much better when combined encrypted and decrypted traffic, because the false positives tend to go down quite a bit when you have both of those views into the traffic itself. Let AIML do its thing on encrypted traffic, but then also let that claim, let that alert be verified based on the decrypted traffic. So that's a detection part. The other part, Scott, that's really key part of this is the R part of response part of NDR. Why? Because during a response, you're trying to recreate a crime scene that may be happened yesterday, that may have happened 6 months ago. And trying to recreate the crime scene based on encrypted packets where you're not sure what's going on versus decrypted packet where you see everything that's going on based on metadata activities, that's much, much more powerful and much better response that you can deliver based on that decrypted. And when I say metadata, by the way, I don't mean just net flow, just header information. I'm talking about what was the protocol used in that traffic? What was the application? What was the TLS certificate used? Did they use a weak certificate? Did they use TLS 1.0? So there's a lot more detail that's possible to get out based on decrypted data than encrypted data alone.
Okay, all right. Hey, we probably got time for one more question here. This is an interesting one. They're saying, my cloud team says NDR sensors will be costly. What are the cost components?
That's a very common question that we tend to hear from the DevOps teams, cloud ops teams, people that are paying the bill to your public cloud. What typically happens is there's the infrastructure cost, integration cost, operational cost. They're looking, chances are, at the operational cost. So this is the cost of paying the bill that you pay to your cloud service provider. That bill is based on amount of traffic that moves around within your VPC, between your VPCs. Within the VPC, you're good. When you move the traffic out of the VPC, then you start paying. When you egress the traffic out of AWS back to Azure GCP, back to on-prem, they're going to charge a much, much larger premium. So that's where the cost comes in. But if you're able to meet with them, there's a really powerful story to tell them, which is, we can reduce the cost of egress by only sending metadata, which is about 1% to 2% of the traffic volume itself. Yet you maintain that level of visibility that NDR needs. And there's other ways to optimize that traffic as well, not just transform it to metadata. But the one, Scott, that we hear the most about is the notion of a sensor traffic cost and the need to have a load balancer. It could be a network load balancer, a gateway load balancer. So if your application is running on VPC A and your NDR and the tooling happens to be on VPC B, you need to put a load balancer in the middle to grab that traffic and send it to the right destination. The cost for that kind of gets quite astronomical quite quickly. That's where they're coming from. With a technology like ours, and there are others that do this as well, you're able to not only reduce but eliminate that load balancer cost, which brings down your cost significantly, making your NDR deployment in the cloud a real possibility.
Okay. All right. Well, Bassam, thanks for putting together a really informative presentation there with Joseph, and then really appreciate all your insights here in the Q&A as well. Thanks a lot for sharing the latest from Gigamon with us.
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
All right, and our last piece of business for today is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that $250 Amazon gift card is Christopher Hall from North Carolina. So congratulations to Christopher. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Gigamon for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.